Visiting after maybe more than 3 years, every site is completely different. We arrived here in October. Suddenly, everything is white and snowed. The lights change by minutes. Everything is so exposed to the weather, everything's so constrained and inspired by nature that is what makes this day different from any other day.
As an architect, it's a huge responsibility to build any site, especially when you are building in places like Tippet Rise. For instance, in Atlantic coast where we build the Truffle, these very beautiful landscapes that are quite untouched, right? This is more and more a treasure in our planet. So, for us, this huge responsibility means that whatever we do there needs to enhance the place, has to enable something new that will make it better, but cannot compromise all the values that these places already have. Landscape in Tippet Rise was a very difficult challenge because of the vastness of the place, because of the lack of architectural references, and the kind of wilderness that wanted to be protected. So by actually creating an architecture that was born from the land, I think we came up with an intervention that you could read them as part of the land, as if they had been there forever. They can read as artworks, so they don't need to be inhabited. They can exist on their own. And I think this is very important for this remote site. At the same time, as you approach them, they become your shelter. So they fulfill this very essential, super important function that architecture has.
Galicia is where our destiny brought us. It's our first love. You never forget your first love. It's where our first project. My first project was the music school. Her first project that we did together was this guy. So our first projects were in Galicia. We were working in this guy in the 𝘛𝘩𝘦 project, and we discovered this place. And we wanted to become locals. So we bought this foundation with 4 columns that was perfectly oriented. I mean, the situation was perfect. But we wanted to build this glass house, just this frame, no? Not frame as a window, frame as a box, as a space, no? Like a Donald Judd box, perfect. Very small, but monumental. So we did this classic Galician galleria. It's fully transparent. It's pretty open, but it's protected because in Galicia, a storm could start in minutes. So Galicia, there's no outdoors. There's this galleria that is in between inside and outside.
We were only allowed to build here, where the slab was already located. And so, there was not much we could decide on that end. Otherwise, we would have maybe built the house closer to the sea. Yeah, the lot is quite big. It includes this area that has direct access to the road, but then it expands, it arrives to the sea. And then the rest of the plot of land became our landscape laboratory, where we are testing different spaces, different architectures, and experiment with the landscape. And so it's been the origin, I would say, of much of our work. When years later we got the commission of Tippet Rice Art Center, we started to do some of the prototypes for what would be structures of landscape. Like this one, this was one of the first iterations on Bird-Tooth Portal, where we were trying to scale up a bit from the models that we had done in the lab and start to work at this bigger scale. We can already think about structure, materiality, even about construction methodologies. And also very important because here in 𝘛𝘩𝘦, in the Costa da Morte, the weather is also very extreme, like in Montana. We could also see how nature would take over. And the fact is that every time we come here, we need to do some uncovering of the structures where vegetation starts to crawl and hide them even completely. We always call Esteban, our neighbor, who was also a great collaborator in the Truffle when we built it, and he helps us clean up because he has all the equipment where he can cut the 𝘚𝘳𝘧𝘧𝘭𝘦 that have all these thorns, and he comes with his machine. We help him as much as we can. The most successful big-scale model that we did was the 𝘛𝘩𝘦 one. Here, we really rehearsed a process of construction that would resemble very much what we ended up doing in Montana. We simulated very closely the process of digging the earth, placing the structure inside, pouring the concrete, letting it cure, and then removing the earth to discover all the richness of textures that we could get. It is very beautiful to have these models here in such close relation to the Truffle, because the Truffle has been such a meaningful project. I mean, without the Truffle, structures of landscape would not have happened. And they're so distant, really, geographically, that having some part of Tippet rice here in 𝘛𝘩𝘦 makes a lot of sense.
Of course, the cows, the cattle of the neighboring farms, they're welcome to come to our yard, and they eat everything except el 𝘠𝘅𝑢. And the 𝘠𝘅𝑢 and the 𝘚𝘳𝘧 are the ones that are covering the barbecue, the truffle, all the sculptures. I mean, I don't have the English names for 𝘠𝘅𝑢 and 𝘚𝘳𝑧. But 𝘠𝘅𝑢 it's like a weapon. No? It's a bush that has, everything is pointed out. It's hostile.
It doesn't want you to get close.
Now you understand 𝘠𝘅𝑢, no? Look at this. It's what grows here naturally. It's beautiful. And 𝘚𝘳𝑧 is where these red fruits, wild berries, but they're very pointy. It's like a cable that takes on and could grab your feet and you would roll down the hill, but 𝘠𝘅𝑢 will keep you up. So it's a natural fence. We are totally safe here against the cliff. We don't have any fencing here. Our kids, we know that we'll never arrive to the cliff because there's all this layer of 𝘠𝘅𝑢 and 𝘚𝘳𝑧 that will avoid them to go through.
There are certain moments where we can carve the 𝘠𝘅𝑢 and the 𝘚𝘳𝑧, and we can get their permission to to walk in between.
Temporary permission.
Temporary permission to walk and explore certain areas, and we do that, and it's amazing. Our kids are the best to find the way. They are smaller, they're fearless, and they are so smart. They have this intuition. It's beautiful. looking at the sea and watching how the water crashes against the rocks, it has this power. It's so powerful, so harsh, but then it brings so much peace. It's amazing to see, so we like to make our way in the Zarza to be closer to nature.
We love this connection with time, with the landscape, with this immense space. And this immensity that you feel when you're here is Atlantic. It doesn't occur in the Mediterranean. It is in the Atlantic. That is a completely different color, a completely different light, and a completely different feeling. And the landscape here is so present, so alive, so brutal, so raw, that we thought this was the place where architecture could try to establish a certain dialogue with it. And that's where the truffle emerged almost as a necessity to express experimentally in a very little room a new way of architecture. We had broken all the rules of architecture. And, you know, that was a beautiful game, a beautiful action to do, but the result, it took us years to digest. And this connects us with Tippet rice. There's a period of 10 years in between the truffle and Tippet rice, where all these little models and experimental sculptural folies architecture were popping up in our backyard. We used to come here a lot to enjoy with our kids and make things and play with them in our architecture playgrounds.
And we realized that we like to be in places that challenge us in some way, you know, where we are not fully comfortable or fully in control. And I don't really know why. Maybe it sparks creativity and it just makes you, there's something inside you that is moving because you need to be adjusting all the time, but it happens here for sure.
And this place has all this exuberant landscape. We're figuring out what would architecture look like if it was casted with this. Not through a panelized, perfect formwork, no. We did hole in the ground, mix it with all these branches and all this nature. And what we got was this piece of nature. This is not actually architecture yet. This is synthesized stone that contains all the substances of the surrounding. And in this pre-architectural state is how the truffle was born. It was when we start cutting, opening, carving, domesticating that space when it became a piece of architecture. But since then, it was just a parasite, a truffle, living at the expense of all this area. And its form is due to this materiality, to this process. And this connection is what makes architecture and nature breathe together.
It is really amazing how this small work has meant so much for our practice. And this is still, after so many years, giving us so much inspiration. We've learned so much with this work. It was one of our first ones and so relevant for everything that we've done after. We named it the Truffle because we wanted this architecture to belong to nature, to be something that would grow out of it. Also something very special, very unique at the same time. And so the Truffle is basically that, is our desire to be in this place and to create just a very small shelter from which to enjoy.
This is a far distant area from city, from civilization. From Santiago, Compostela is 1 hour, from Coruña another hour. Vigo, Porto are 2 hours away. This is the edge, the end of the world, Finisterre. And the balcony to the Atlantic, this is where the rural acquires its maximum natural expression. And we wanted all these materials of the rural world, the soil, the hay bales, to give order and consistency and volume and scale.
There are very important things happening here. This rougher texture that comes from the contact of the concrete directly with the hay bales, or this smoother, also very wrinkly texture of the contact and the pressure of the concrete with the plastic that we put on top of the hay bales to avoid the concrete leaking down. And then outside also the contact of the concrete with the earth that becomes much more dirty, much more contaminated with the stones and vegetation, and where, these get crushed into the concrete, and then we have things growing outside on top of the truffle. Then, when it had hardened, we brought the neighbor's cow. She would be the one helping us to eat away all the interior core of the truffle. So in a way, she would be eating all the hay, little by little, without a hurry, because this project is about time. It's about process. And then once it was voided, we discovered the space. But not until then did we realize what had happened. We did not really control how much the concrete would push the hay bales, what the real height of this space and width would be, because we can see in the walls, in the ceiling, this kind of pressures, this kind of pushing of one material against the other. And this was, in a way, part of the process, but a work where we had no drawing that could describe the final outcome. In this work, we are deciding to forget anything that we learned in architecture school, where it's always about, coming to a final work that is super controlled, super detailed, where uncertainty has been removed. I think this is how architecture is taught and practiced. This shelter, this room needed just the basics, a place to sit, to sleep, a place to shower, and a place to keep a fire lit in the winter. And we first created a very massive enclosed space. And when we had built the full truffle, we made strategic cuts, the 3 contacts to the outdoors, where we had planned, and then we opened the window, the door, and the skylight. We wanted to frame this view. We wanted to see where the sea meets the sky. Sometimes this line of the horizon almost dissolves, especially in days like this one, where it's cloudy and there's fog. But then it changes completely, and you have a perfectly blue sky, a super dark, dramatic sea. And we wanted to be able to see You know, the lights of the town and the port at the end, the stars at night, which are, you know, not much artificial light around and in this area.
When we casted all the concrete and the soil and the stone over the hay bales, that was a boulder. That was not yet architecture. It was when we sliced and we cut it, we opened like a truffle. And those pieces became part of the house also. This is our barbecue. And it was literally the front door piece that was cut down. And when we put it here, we discovered this fabulous, almost altar to the Atlantic where we do our kitchen. This is the kitchen of the Truffle. Sí. Entonces se nos va el fuego. Architecture is not about buildings. Architecture is about life. To make life better physically and spiritually, to solve all the needs and desires of people, to merge respectfully with nature. All that is our home in different scales, in the domestic room scale, in the grand built environment scale, territorial scale. So everything departs from that sensibility that architecture develops. I think that we need to look back to the deep roots of our selves and our culture, and that's the only way to become universal through the principles that are so deep-rooted in our folk, in our culture, in our soil.
The only thing that we are certain is that we don't want to be a la mode or in any trend or surfing any wave of style. We're totally uninterested in all this.
We think if we really want to connect with something, is with the spirit of the place. In Santiago, Compostela, we connected through the stone, through the materiality, with a long-distance tradition of megalithic constructions that had its last, chain.
The architecture of the earth, the natural expressionistic language that is deeply embedded in this cornice and is part of this landscape.
Santiago is an historical center. When we walk through it, it's almost one of those hotspots of Occidental culture. Everybody in Spain has been in Santiago at least once. It's an amazing place to connect with, say, Spanish soul in its history and an amazing landscape.
Y la luz, sobre todo la luz tan pura, ¿no? Tan clara.
Sí.
El aire.
These streets, they connect us to my mom and dad. They spend, the last 25 years every summer in music in Compostela. It's a festival where my dad used to teach master classes. And I remember every summer walking with them in Santiago, Compostela for 2 or 3 days.
And also when we were building this guy, they would come with us to the quarry, they would come to the construction sites. We have many memories.
Yeah, my mom and dad used to love the city.
Yeah.
They loved it.
So starting in Galicia was linked to the first competition of the Music Studies Center that Anton and Javier built.
When I started as an architect, my first steps, I was alone. And when we won our first competition, the commission required the architect together with a technical architect, an aparejador. And I needed somebody that wanted to take a journey together through the first steps in a career. I wanted an ally. And after interviewing a lot of people in their early career, I met Javier. And it was, love at first sight.
Me gustó el proyecto, fue lo primero. Me gustó el estudio, un estudio pequeñito. Y también me llamó la atención, yo había tenido contacto con otros estudios de arquitectos muchísimo más mayores, más experimentados, etc. Y me llamó la atención un estudio con arquitectos tan jóvenes. Y bueno, fue, no sé, amor a primera vista.
We shook hands, and that was the agreement that is still alive. The agreement, the contract, was very simple. Let's walk together. Let's work together. Let's enjoy this journey together, and wherever we go together. And here we are, 25 years after. When we won the competition of the music studies and we had to build it, Javier and myself created the ensemble. That was the origin. The Escuela Altos Estudios Musicales contains, nevertheless, all the interests that we have been developing through the years. We didn't know that when we were doing it. It was just a pure intuition, desire to connect the ancestral vernacular substance of the historical city with a very contemporary language that was somehow breaking, disrupting all that order that was taught.
Yo creo que la primera reunión que tenemos con José Antonio Lemos, con el cantero, yo juraría que fuimos a su cantera a verle cuando le presentamos el proyecto, porque le pedimos que nos hiciera en su cantera un mock-up de cómo sería pues, unas piedras grandes colocadas con esa apertura en la contra, etc. Y me acuerdo que bueno, en el segundo viaje, cuando fuimos, me acuerdo que comimos allí en Vigo y fuimos luego a la cantera, y nos había preparado, pues era una esquina con dos piedras, dos niveles de piedra en una esquina. Nosotros, claro, nuestra impresión, me recuerdo cuando llegué con Anthony y lo vimos, que era una altura, pues, qué sé, tendría eso 3 metros y pico, creo, una cosa así de algo, 4 metros, eran 2 piedras puestas. Y claro, nosotros estábamos ensimismados viéndolo, ¿no? Estábamos, vamos, alterados, diciendo, joder, qué bonito, que el plano de la piedra, esto va a ser, bueno. Y yo creo que José Antonio nos miraba con incredulidad, ¿sabes? Como diciendo, pero estos, ¿qué me están...? O sea, miren aquí, le pongo 2 piedras y están como si hubieran visto una maravilla, una escultura de Miguel Ángel, ¿no? Yo creo que debió de quedarse así como sorprendido, ¿no? Hasta que se creyó lo que le estábamos pidiendo. Y bueno, y yo creo que nos lo decía. Dice, bueno, vamos a ver, van a venir aquí los de Madrid a enseñarnos a nosotros cómo se hace, cómo se colocan las piedras.
With the musical studies as a first architecture building that Ensamble Studio created, we started exploring the matter that comes from the quarry, raw, unfinished, uncut. We use that as a very, very expressive, aged, contemporary facade. While the light in the exterior scratches the facade, in the interior slides through the space. So this antithesis between the inside and the outside goes against one of the dogmas of the modern architecture, the transparency. In this case, we wanted the intimacy of being inside this compact volume was also very good provider of acoustical insulation and the distribution of all the music rooms in the inside of this big mass. So the Music Study School was our welcoming project in the finca de Vistalegre.
Qué maravilla cómo está este edificio y aquí está todo lo que hemos hecho. Está la luz, está la gravedad, está el paisaje, está esta parte artística.
La materialidad, ¿no? Que
Sí.
aquí también se ve el origen de muchas de las cosas que hemos hecho en otros edificios.
Me sigue sorprendiendo todas las ideas que estamos desarrollando y que están presentes en este edificio.
The plan for this location was to be a residential building for academics.
So we went to the mayor with our proposal and we asked if he would be interested in having a civic public building rather than an apartment building in this amazing park. And we convinced him and we got the commission to do it. Santiago is a city of walls and this building is in the boundary. So we wanted to do a building built of walls of stone. So we went to the quarry and these informal broken pieces are always wasted. We thought that these were the most beautiful ones, that after this, they were only going to be either crushed or shaped into a product that we understood this was a piece of landscape that we could reuse in an architectural equilibrium. In the process of design, Deborah was still a student. And she participated in the conception, in the development of the project, and then she graduated. And the project that took approximately 1 year or 1.5 years to develop was going to be built. And Deborah asked Javier and myself that she wanted to lead the execution, the construction on the field. And she wanted to move to the quarry and to take care of it. We were astonished of the bravery and the courage of this young architect. And we said, sure. But we were also the builders. So this was not just design, it was design and build, a major responsibility that Deborah overtook.
Yeah, for me it was like a master's degree in construction, in everything that I had not learned in the university. So I think I was very lucky to, when I started on the office, this project was in conversation, and so I could work on it from the very beginning. Because of the previous experience with the Music Studies Center, we already had some relations established with the Quarry people, and we knew that stone would play a major role. And we went again back to the Quarry to see what was there for us. When we were doing the construction of the Skyhead, this is the trip that I would do every single day when we were developing the stone wall. I would come here very early morning, would stay most of the day, and then would go back to either to the site in Santiago, or sometimes when it was late, already all the way home. But I think besides the professional experience, for me, it was an incredible human experience because, when I arrived to the quarry, although I was very excited and very determined, something inside me, there was some resistance with prejudice, saying, okay, this is an environment full of men, very rough, and, I was already getting ready to, be bullied in some way. And I have to say that didn't happen. I mean, I think all the concerns they had about me and about us, they were understandable. I have very, alive memories of the time when I was there. I could probably draw perfectly well every single detail of the mountain and how they were being cut and all the stones that were scattered and how the road went, from below the mountain to the top, because I was there, so much time, but also documenting everything.
So we are arriving to Porriño. This is the lower part of the mountain. Porriño has a very beautiful pink stone, el rosa Porriño.
And the upper part of the mountain has this gray stone which we used, 𝘛𝘩𝘦 𝘛𝘳𝘶𝘧𝘭𝘦.
Toma dos. ¿Qué tal?
Hola.
Hola.
¿Cuánto tiempo?
¿Año?
Bueno.
Querido,
¿Qué tal?
pues nada, que...
¿Cuántos años?
15.
15 años.
15.
Nosotros llevamos 10 años en Estados Unidos.
15. Pues sí.
¿Tú cuántos años tienes?
17.
Tenía ella 2 años entonces. Aún no había nacido el otro hijo mío que nació a los 2 años y le puse tu nombre.
¿Ah, sí? It's been very beautiful to come back to the quarry and meet Lemos, the quarry owner son, who at the time was also very young. And we were recalling that he used to be always very angry because he saw us asking to do things that they were not used to. He was younger, but maybe he was more conservative, or he thought that this was going out of kind of the line of work they were doing, or he thought there were risks involved. There was a lot of fighting and a lot of resistance, and a lot of fights between the dad and the son because of us. The dad was ready to do something wild. And he was now telling us that he remembered how angry he got, but at the same time that he now shares this vision that his father had, trying to do works that will be remembered, and his way of understanding the work in the quarry that he has inherited from his dad.
This is the inaugurational stone from the ceremony. I totally remember. Mira,
Eso lo grabara alguien que trajeras tú, no me acuerdo quién era.
pues no me acuerdo yo tampoco.
He mentioned he keeps one of the stones that we discarded in the end from the prototype. He keeps it, and he kind of fixed it so that nobody will take it away.
Mire, ahora le he puesto la torreta encima del agua porque si no me la mueve.
Si no te la corta.
He says that he put this structure just above because he wants to keep it. Damos un besito.
Mi padre lo sabía, ¿eh? Mi padre lo sabía decir, yo no me acuerdo.
José Antonio Lemos, the quarry owner, passed away 10 years ago. It's been quite sad to come here and not see him, because this reminds me very much of him. In 2006, I spent 6 months of my life in order to build this Sky building. It's changed quite a bit. I think they've excavated a lot of stone already. I am maybe 7 meters below the plane where we built the full prototype, but the atmosphere is very much the same. You can see the perfectly well-cut stone in the back. That's the result of cutting very squared blocks. They're ready for industry. And then you can see also a lot of the scattered waste that comes out from cutting an irregular mountain into perfectly squared blocks, which is the material that first caught our eye and really enamored us and triggered the whole process of creativity. Definitely it's much quieter than I remember it. So you have to imagine it full of trucks, making a lot of dust, full of big machinery, making a lot of noises, and explosives when they used to put dynamite in order to extract the big blocks. Now we were told that they don't use the dynamite anymore. They do it in a smoother way with just with the cutting wires. But it used to be a quite extreme environment. And I think back, I only hold good memories, but I remember that the day-to-day was pretty harsh. It definitely made me admire even more the people who need to be working in these conditions every day, all their lives, and that then give us the types of products that we consume in our buildings, in our homes. In the beginning, there was this coming to an understanding of what we wanted to do. For them, these were ugly stones. No? These were against their practice of trying to make a very perfect slabs and tiles. And so, it took a bit of time to get them to understand. And I think they didn't understand until the end when the whole wall was built as a prototype in the quarry and the owner of the quarry, José Antonio Lemos, he looked at the wall, he said, well, now I understand.
He wanted to keep it.
He wanted to keep it. But he said, now I understand, said, this is the 𝘛𝘩𝘦 𝘠𝘠𝘍𝑰, which translated is from ugly, it's actually beautiful.
Another of these beautiful words of el maestro cantero Lemos was that we had finished this wall. He came to us very paternally and he said, to build a well-crafted stone wall, it's easy, could be done by anyone. But to do it wrongly is very difficult. And he was right. We were somehow disrupting hundreds of years of stone craft just by enhancing the expressivity and connecting this towards this beautiful landscape that faces.
When you are an architect and when you study architecture, the world of construction looks like very attractive. The fact is that when you are in it, it's really tough, it's really hard. And especially in this project where we were the contractors, it meant also that we were the responsible ones for controlling the budget, and this always creates a lot of tension. We'll convince everybody that this was possible, although if you really think it now with perspective, I was totally new to the field, but they were also pretty young. I mean, this was one of the first works that we were all doing. So when we look back, we think it was incredible that we made it happen. But we were totally convinced at the time. The budget to do the building was not very high, so we had to use our ingenuity to try to do something that we wanted to do very outstanding and meaningful. And we wondered whether we could use this waste. So we started kind of playing with the models, seeing how we could stack stones one on top of each other in order to come up with an idea before going back to the quarry and talking to the quarry people to make it happen.
Well, José Antonio was here, and José Antonio father.
En la obra trabajó Débora y yo.
Yeah.
Los dos.
His father and myself, we were the intellectual gurus. These guys were, you know, were the... They were discussing all the time.
Y discutiendo allí esto, hay que poner esa piedra. Yo, no, tú pones esa piedra. Llegaba mi tío y me decía, vamos a poner esa piedra. Y iba yo de interlocutor, no se puede poner. Y luego le decía, sí, hay que poner esa piedra. Mi tío me decía, es que esa tía está loca, ¿cómo no poner piedra ahí? Estos piensan que esto que es coger una piedra y tirar con ella ahí. Era de hecho. Yo hacía un poco de interlocutor, ¿sabes? Claro, yo llegaba y... O sea, luego yo tenía que ir junto de ti y decirte, Débora, esa piedra por así quiero esa piedra. Y cuando te convencía, bien. Cuando te convencía, me mandabas un mensaje a él. No me quieren poner la piedra.
Y hablaba con tu padre.
Y tú hablabas con mi padre. Y mi padre me llamaba a mí. A ver, Antonio, ¿qué pasa ahí? ¿Qué pasa ahí? ¿Qué pasa con la piedra, papá? ¿La piedra se puede poner? Bueno, a ver, mira a ver. Pero claro, en el momento que luego lo ves y ves que fue un éxito, digo, te sientes y dices tú, Dios, tenía que haber apoyado más. Sí, ¿cómo que era la piedra? De punta. A lo mejor sí, claro, si hacíamos eso, igual se nos derrumbaba todo y abandonamos.
Yesterday met Antonio Lemos and his family for the first time, and it felt that we had met them before. You know, they all knew about the experience we had together. They had all visited the building. They all knew where we had done the prototype, and it was a very nice family moment. And we had not seen each other for so many years.
And after we went to his brother's house, we were given liquor and wine, and after we went to his house, so there was this kind of need of, you know, welcome back again those memories.
Yeah, yesterday was beautiful also to talk to them and and talk about things that we had never talked, because when we were doing the construction there was so much going on, also so much tension, and everybody was really focused, and also in the project of this guy we were asking ourselves, how did they agree to do this with us? No, the client, the city, the people in the quarry, how did they really allowed us to do this work? And then when we met them, they were actually saying, no, we regret not having supported you even more. No? So it's amazing then what everybody takes in. And it's also great to see that I think the types of works that we do, because we are fully engaged, and it's a very meaningful experience for everyone. And this creates ties that even if you don't see each other in 10 years, when you come back together, there's a really strong tie because of something that we created together, where we were all pushed out of our comfort zone, where we were all kind of testing our limits. And I think we need this in life. No, we cannot just be doing what we know how to do on and on and on, because otherwise there's no growth, there's no evolution, and there's no excitement.
We've always built structures that challenge and defy gravity. It is monumental, stable structure that has been engineered to be like this. But it feels that is in a pre-collapse moment. And this fiction between what it is and how you read it is part of the architecture game. The stability of this structure is guaranteed by the gravity that pushes all these masses together, but also these connections that brace it and creates kind of a tissue of three-dimensional braced structure that all the stones are literally stuck. And also the proportion, the thickness. We're talking about a very thick building wall. And also the form. The form is curved, so it would be stable also by the action of the form. So the combinations of all this, with the addition of that, we built it twice, gives us the confidence that this is maybe the most secure and stable structure that we've ever built.
We built it twice. We built it once in the quarry. It was not the intention to build it fully. We just wanted to make some tests, but then we didn't know where to stop. And also we realized that we are now here in the middle of the city center. It's also a place where it's hard to organize a construction because it's very dense, it's very protected. So we realized that moving with these heavy stones, it was much better to do the work in the quarry, where if we needed to discard a stone or pick another one, everything was very ready around us, versus having to make the stones travel to the site, and that in the end didn't seem like the best plan. So we built it fully in the quarry, and then we numbered all the stone, but then the wall was transported to the site and we assembled it a second time. So already much faster and with much more certainty than the first one. And I think this was a very good decision that we made.
Yeah, technically it was the only way to make it feasible. But for us as a practice, it opened up something that we're still working on, that is the fabrication of the landscape. The only way to unleash creativity and to go completely out of the box of craft standard processes in construction was, like artists, be in control of the full conception and production process. You cannot imagine an artist that does a sculpture and he has the idea and commissions somebody else to hit the hammer. This is inconceivable. Well, this building connects with this tradition of art in the same way.
With this building, we had the chance to experiment quite a bit. And the stone wall was, of course, one major aspect of it. But behind it, in this building made of walls, we decided to do a wall that would operate almost as a contrary. And it would be a very light wall, it would be a wall of light. We wanted to make something like colored windows of the cathedral. So we decided to build it with CD cases. We got 500,000 of them, and we created like a full mural. Again, something that would have been really difficult to do with another contractor.
All these shadows that use that screen as a beautiful mural of these changing black and whites, at night it turns and exhales color and music and ephemeral digital energy. So this changes from history to contemporaneity was part of the ideas that drove our design. CD cases somehow celebrate the end of the physical era of the devices and somehow transition to the digital one.
Many people, when they come from the park and they walk in this space, they think that this is it, that this is the building. They don't realize there are other spaces behind these walls, below, more connected to the street. Now we've come underground. We are in a more intimate, private space where performers, artists come to rehearse, come to work on their music or on their art. And they find here the kind of underground feel and touch that I think works very well with the kind of activities that they do.
Here we have an auditorium recording digital labs and post-producing audiovisual documents. Architectonically, we wanted to abstract the nature of above in the walls underground. Scratched curtain of concrete. And in the mezzanine, we have the trunks of the trees that formed the cast of the lower part.
So this landscape is monumental. It's definitely marked the way in which we think about architecture and the impact it has in transforming this type of natural places. It's probably also affected very much the way in which we think about materiality and the kind of respect we have for materials, where we always try to exploit their potential to find, in a way, exciting forms of architecture where they will continue to exist. I think there's a lot of poetry in the way in which we understand that we are manipulating matter, but always trying to give it a very powerful form.
So 𝘛𝘩𝘕 was a symphonic piece that my father was composing when my mom was pregnant with me. So I named the house in homage to that first music that I'm sure it was the first music that I heard. So there's this architecture and music and love that has been always part of our art projects. Deborah and I needed, a small house and a big manifesto where we could make our experience living in our own architecture. This was the greatest mission of all. Generally, architects have to receive, reports of how their buildings performed, how they are experienced, how happy people are on them. We had here first-hand information. We started to enjoy architecture, not only by designing and building it, but by living it. Well, we wanted also to explore the capacity of architecture to reinterpret things, no? How to transform these massive beams of 50 tons of concrete prefabricated into a levitating wall that practically embraces a space without enclosing it, no? Creating the gravitatory action, but with a full transparent and connecting all the different parts of the house together. These beams are out of scale in a home, but they are the standard when you do a bridge. So we're just transporting these parts from one family to other. And we wanted to make a connection with a classic gesture of a cornice, no? Like a Greek temple, no? That relies in the lintel, in the supports in each other. No? But they are totally legible. The horizontal beam, the column, you know, every part is legible, is transparent. Every part is speaking to the rest.
Sobre 𝘠𝘍𝑗𝘍, digamos, el reto, digamos, tecnológico que era. Replantear la posición de tanto los muros de apoyo, sobre todo de los pilares, las pantallas sobre las que luego iban a ir apoyadas esas grandes vigas. Que llegaran las vigas según empezaban a llegar, eso era un ensamblaje continuado y que no era un non-stop. O sea, eso era empezar, eran 9, 10 días, empezar a montarlos y no podía fallar nada, de repente que llegara. Así que me acuerdo que me pasaba, yo no sé, la de horas que me pasé comprobando y recomprobando todos los replanteos que hacíamos de cotas, de posiciones. Teníamos una grúa de 350 toneladas, creo que era, en la esquina superior de la parcela. Tuvimos que entonces colocar una segunda grúa de menos tonelaje y hacer una maniobra en el aire. Se apoyó, me acuerdo, se dejó apoyada en un lado, en uno de los extremos la viga, se soltó una lazada, se cogió con la otra grúa y ya con las dos grúas se colocó en su posición. Para mí fue la maniobra más espectacular de todas.
Everything starts from a beam that is in pure equilibrium, practically in the ground, is the beam that we have inside the room. And this other beam, it's an inverted kind of canopy. Over this beam, we have the I-beam that cantilevers in this direction, and there's an helix of space that culminates with a stone. And in the middle, we have this beam that is the same, that gives access, but upside down. And in that canal, we used the water as the last structure that was, with that weight, defining the last balance of the house. Everything is a structure here. The water of the swimming pool is a structure. The stone is a structure. And we are using just the form of these figures to configure the narrative of how the structure is conforming the spaces, the entry gallery, or the swimming pool, or this wall, or the stone that is the gravitatory point, the place where all the sequence is cut with that counterbalance.
While we were actively working in the 𝘠𝘍𝑗𝘍 house, we received the invitation to participate in an invited competition for the Reader's House. And this was an incredible opportunity for us. We were at the time a very, very young practice. And so we competed and we won the competition. The project of the Reader's House was about transforming this old slaughterhouse into a center for learning. We got a lot of inspiration from the site itself, where all of these very beautiful warehouses that were designed by engineers in the beginning of the 20th century, they are connected with pergolas that fly and create bridges in the air. And this was very inspiring, and in a way we wanted to use this idea of bridging, of connecting. You know, the most powerful, let's say, gesture of this project, which is
the huge beams entering the windows and creating bridges as spaces where people can sit and can learn. It was very much rooted to this idea of the project. The slaughterhouse is a historic project sitting in the middle of Madrid that was abandoned for a long time. There was a lot of speculation on what to do with this place, also even ideas to demolish it. So the Reader's House and other projects that happened in this complex were really about restoring this very important architecture, protecting it, and giving it a new meaning and new life. Looking back, it's very interesting to realize how works like the Truffle or a 𝘠𝘓𝑗𝑠copian house that we take the time to do, to experiment, to investigate, have led us to works like the Reader's House or Tippet Rice Art Center. Without having done those early works first, I don't know if those other commissions would have arrived and what would they have been.
We were building like 3 buildings that are seminal for Ensamble Studio at a time. And this guy, we started to prefabricate the landscape. We did all the stone wall, firstly in the quarry and after transported. So our idea of industrialization was already beating. So it coincided that we were doing Santiago Compostela and this house. Deborah was in Santiago Compostela taking care of that project, and Javier was in Madrid building this house.
And I was going back and forth between the 2 sites.
We were somehow in a dilemma of the definition of our architecture. We were very young, and we were debating between the roughness of the architecture of the earth or this synthesized tectonic based in pretty much in a script and in a prefabricated kit of parts. And immediately after we did this house, we built the Truffle. That is the culmination of this architecture of the earth research that started with Santiago in a small but very intense. So since, and with the Truffle and the 𝘠𝘠𝑗𝑠copian house, somehow and apparently contradicting themselves, we have working in these 2 parallel lines that try to get closer, and why not create a spark by connecting them. And this is the next 20 years of our career.
What we learn about our early works like the Truffle or a 𝘠𝘠𝑗𝑠copian house is that architecture is about serving basic needs, needs for shelter, for safety, social needs, for sure, but there's also great potential to
use the best of science and to connect with art in very deep and meaningful ways. And we really believe in enriching architecture with other fields of knowledge, in diluting those lines that sometimes exist. Because essentially, basic needs is about fulfilling aspirations of people. Architecture is about building places for life. It's about building with nature, building better places for people to have good lives and to be together with others.